Hey, this is Chris from Greatest Hits Rekkid Talk. And so today I'm answering a thread started a couple weeks ago, so maybe I'm a little late jumping in. Started a couple weeks ago by MGK Boston. And so he had like a 12 plus 1, so a baker's dozen, a lucky 13, looking at greatest hits albums. And so when the thread started and he made his video and some other people jumped in, I was thinking, oh, I don't really have all that many greatest hits compilations. I don't know if I have enough to do this. Of course, I ended up having more than enough to do this just with the vinyl. I didn't even have to go into other formats to find enough. I did find in my personal collection, my greatest hits collection leaned heavily towards your legacy artists, people from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. So these are artists that were most active before I was born or when I was a child. I've noticed that sort of the artists of my generation X, when I was getting albums in real time, 80s, 90s, and beyond. I don't have as many compilations, greatest hits for those groups. There are a few exceptions. And I think nowadays, I don't even know if they really even do the greatest hits idea anymore. Like, if I wanted to get like a Taylor Swift greatest hits or an Ed Sheeran greatest hits, I mean, do they even make that on physical format? Or do you just go find a playlist for that? So at first I thought I was going to go from A to Z in my collection. But I noticed I didn't have a greatest hits of ZZ Top or Frank Zappa. I'm actually going to go A to W. So A is for Abba. Of course, I have the Abba greatest hits. So this is the first greatest hits from early in their career. So stuff like Waterloo and Mamma Mia and Fernando and the like. But it doesn't have like Dancing Queen and some of the later songs. I made the mistake about a year ago or so saying you only needed greatest hits from Abba. Richard McCook very vehemently disagreed with me. I haven't dived into the entire ABBA discography, but I did notice that on an album there were actually some of the deep tracks were better than some of the maybe the greatest hit stuff that aren't my favorites of theirs. And to be honest, my favorite ABBA songs are like the most obvious ABBA songs. And since I'm not going all the way to Z, I'm going to W. So we have Stevie Wonder's Original Musicarium, Volume 1. So, of course, you got Superstition, You Are the Sunshine of My Life, Higher Ground, all kinds of other stuff. And, of course, I'm sure that if I dove into the Stevie Wonder discography, there's probably all sorts of great tracks that are obviously not on this compilation. I noticed I have quite a few 50s rockers in this particular format. Obviously, that was an era that was more of a singles era rather than an album-oriented era. And of course, that was stuff that came out before I was born. I'll show a couple examples from there. So this is Chuck Berry's Golden Decade. So this was put out on Chess or Checker Records. Yeah, Chess Records. And so, of course, this is going to have Maybelline and Johnny B. Good, In No Particular Place to Go, and Roll Over Beethoven, and all of the obvious Chuck Berry songs that you would expect on a Greatest Hits compilation. Another artist, I'm not showing all my examples, but I have the great Buddy Holly. So this is a compilation that MCA put out. Of course, Buddy Holly had we all know he had a career that was way too short. And this one doesn't really even have all the Buddy Holly songs you would want on it. In fact, it's missing a lot of them. There's no Peggy Sue and stuff like that. So it's a little bit crazy. Maybe I need more Buddy Holly. So another genre that the greatest hits is oftentimes where you want to go to is classic country. Again, a lot of the country artists were very singles driven. They weren't making concept albums, wasn't album oriented. A lot of your older country albums are basically a few singles and a lot of filler. So an artist that I don't think I'm going to go out and try to get a bunch of studio albums of. We got Kenny Rogers' Greatest Hits. And so this obviously has almost all the obvious stuff from his most commercially successful part of his career, The Gambler and Coward of the County, and You Decorated My Life, and Lady, all that sort of stuff. Another such artist for me, and you got Mel Tillis, Southern Rains, and Blind in Love, and etc. And again, I'm probably not going to dive any further into the Mel Tillis discography. There are some people like Dolly and Loretta and Willie and Johnny. You don't need to, you know them by their first names. These are some people that, I'm not completist on any of them, but these are people I actually have some studio albums of. Of course, it's important to have the best of groups. So, of course, I have the Best of the James Gang featuring Joe Walsh. And I only knew probably like one or two songs on this before I got it. Even a lot of the hits were songs I didn't really know. And I actually ended up liking this a lot more than I thought. Sometimes I was thinking, oh, maybe I should just get the 45 with the one song. But no. Maybe that's a sign I need some studio albums by that group. And of course, this is the supersized. This is the Best of Everything by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers from 76 to 2016. So this is a 4 LP set, which has obviously tons of big Tom Petty songs on it. Tom Petty was somebody where I felt like I needed more than like a single disc collection. I didn't want to get every single album. I have some of them on CD, and this seemed to be good for him. And so there you go. The Best of Everything by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Sometimes you want the worst, though. So, of course, there's the Worst of Jefferson Airplane. So, of course, this is a compilation of their early stuff, White Rabbit and Blues from an Airplane and Somebody to Love and all that sort of stuff. I think everything on here is from the 1960s. So that's the Worst of Jefferson Airplane. Now, there are some artists that are more of my generation that maybe I was a little bit late getting bored on, and I just have greatest hits collections rather than individual albums. So Caius is one of them, something I just got very recently. Muchas Gracias, the best of. And this is really a weird best of because, I mean, first of all, this wasn't really a group that had like radio hits. So this is like obviously some like fan favorites, but there's also B-sides and live cuts on here. So it's a little bit of a strange bird for a compilation. We've got the Screaming Trees. So this is sort of the example of a group leaves a label, goes to a bigger label, has some success. So Screaming Trees, when they left SST in the early 90s, SST put this out. And this is really, really good stuff. And of course, we've lost a couple of the members of the group in the last year. Mark Lanigan and Van Connor have both passed away in the last 12 months or so. And another person that we obviously lost way too soon is Elliott Smith. And so this is an introduction to Elliott Smith. So this features songs off of all of his studio albums. Needle in the Hay is probably the one that I would be, I latch on to the most of his. And this was put out by Kill Rock Stars label. And then finally, what will happen is that sometimes you get sucked in by bonus material. So they put on those bonus songs that are only on the Greatest Hits comp. So this might be a group that you already have all their regular albums, but you still need to get the greatest hits comps. And so there's the White Stripes greatest hits. Well, I have all the White Stripes studio albums, but of course this was the vault issue. So of course there's all kinds of extra unneeded goodies like magnets for your refrigerator. But the real reason why I got this, now the issue that came out in regular record stores was just a 2-disc set that was just greatest hits that somebody with all the albums like me didn't need. But we have the 3rd disc, and I pulled out the wrong one, but I have the 3rd disc that has collected B-sides on it. Let's see if I can find that one. Disc 2, disc 3. So obviously 3-disc sets are a big pain in the butt to deal with. And so we've got basically you would have to track down all the B-sides to have this. And so I went ahead and got that. So MGK Boston, I showed you 13 different greatest hits albums, kind of going from like the 50s up to the 2000s. And a couple weeks after you started the thread, but hopefully people are still a little bit interested in this. So I flail to turn off the video.